Good evening. Welcome to Live United. Living United, giving, volunteering, advocating, really being part of the community. And that's what many of our organizations do. They make a difference in the life of our citizens. Today I have with me Jude Grofier. Jude is with Monadnock Area Peer Support. I want to thank you for being with me, Jude.
Thanks for having me on the show.
You know, your organization does some pretty amazing work. And one of the things that I really love about it, it's a peer-to-peer model. And I can't think of anything more valuable than really people who are having a life experience, a lived experience, really being able to share that with each other and strengthen each other. So I want to talk a little bit about the work that you do. You're the programming coordinator at Monadnock Peer Support. What does that mean?
So we have this amazing newsletter that comes out that members give a lot of their input into, and it's called the Butterfly Bulletin, and it comes out monthly, and it shares a lot of sort of the creative writing, the art, and all of our programming. So any little schedule glitch that happens is usually, you know, because I made a typo or something like that, you know, but it's sort of all of our calendars on the back, and then we have group descriptions in the middle or near the back, and just sort of talks about kind of our mission and gives it in layman terms, like what we're doing and who we are. So I might be in the office working on the newsletter or doing some emails or coordinating programming with like getting a speaker to come in. We have a speaker come in every month to talk about wellness and recovery and things of that nature.
So Jude, one of the things you do, so you have this wonderful butterfly bulletin. We were talking about it, and that's why you started with that at the top of the show here, which is a way for people to express themselves and communicate, and through a very visual as well as artistic, creative way. But you also have some amazing programming. You just mentioned speakers that you have come. What else type of programming do you have going on at Monadnock Peer Support?
So one of our most popular groups is the Depression Bipolar Support Group. So that one is, it happens twice a week. And because it's so popular, we've moved it to twice a week. All of the staff are trained in something called intentional peer support, which is really important to all of us and makes a difference in how we interact with each other. So each person who comes in and is on staff, and each person who comes in and talks with any of the staff, like we all have a lived experience with some kind of mental health issue. So like for me, I've dealt with depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, you know, things like that. So when people come in and they're having a hard time and they talk to us, we can kind of relate to them on that level. So besides some of the training that the staff has had, we've also got this amazing program called the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. So Mary Ellen Copeland came up with this. She had manic depression. She had been told by her doctor that she would never recover. She would always have relapses. And so part of what this sort of peer movement is all about is getting people together and talking about, okay, well, this is what's going on in your life, and what do you want, and how do you stay well? Like, how do you make yourself, you know, how do you get back from a relapse, or how do you handle things when you've got some kind of a trigger going on? And so this is like a very methodical, piece by piece way of having it kind of all mapped out for what you want to do to keep your wellness. And so we have a Wellness Recovery Action Plan class. We call it a workshop. So that's coming up on the last week of June to the last week of August, and it'll be on Mondays. It's an 8-week class, and we go through, I can give you like all the details now, or, you know, whatever you need, but like, you know, you start out with your wellness toolbox. So for me with depression, like something that's helpful for me is getting outside, going for a walk. Like I know that those are simple things, but they really do help. So, and also like having peer support, going to the depression bipolar support group might be a part of my wellness recovery action plan as well.
So during this summer program that you're offering, people will have an opportunity to really put together a plan for themselves,
Exactly.
it sounds like, and to find all those different tools that kind of fit in their well-being plan. So so that's a great opportunity. Now, is there a cost to any of the programs that you offer?
It's the really, really cool thing in like this age where everything is so expensive and there's so much monetary stuff going on. We're free, you know. So I think that's a huge service to the community. But I mean, it's definitely a service, but I also like to think of it like everyone who comes in there may not realize that they have something to contribute, something important. A lot of people just are sort of trying to get through the day, and it's just a struggle sometimes even to come in and take part in one of the groups. And so sometimes we have it set up so that if you wanted to just come in and hang out in the living room, you could do that. You know, you don't need to make an appointment. We're open from 9 to 5 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. 9 to 1 on Saturdays, 9 to 1 on Saturdays, and then 11 to 7 on Wednesdays. You know, and so people can drop in anytime that they want. You don't need an appointment. Sometimes people like to bring someone with them, and that can be helpful because it can be a little nerve-wracking going into a new place where you don't know anyone.
And do you find that people sometimes may come for a little while they're in need of support and service, and then may disappear for a little while and then come back?
Yeah, definitely. Our sort of ultimate goal is to help folks to be a part of their community. You know, so when someone is sort of having a hard time, you know, and, you know, they might be hearing voices or they might be dealing with some kind of severe traumatic event, the whole thought is not to take them out of their community, but to provide a safe place for them to talk so that they can share like what's going on for them and kind of just be heard and validated. And then think about like, again, what you want. And being a part of the community is something that's really important to us. So kind of our end goal would be for someone to come in and be there like every day, all day, and then move on to find a job or something like that and realize I might come in and touch base every once in a while, but I don't need to be here. You know, we have folks who come in for our check-in or our check-out, which is just a nice little community building piece where people kind of talk about how they are, you know, and everyone gets kind of their 2 minutes of time or a minute and a half, and we just kind of build community and share that way. It's just, I mean, you can pretty much talk about anything. You know, and I've certainly seen folks come in crying. I've been crying before, and the cool part is that I think, you know, tears are definitely looked at as a sign of strength and a way of healing. And I think that's not something that you see in the everyday world. And a lot of times, you know, people who, I know I felt like an outsider and like I didn't belong. And this place definitely helps me to find a place of belonging. So we really try to focus on, you know, the mutuality. Like when I do this RAP workshop, it's not about me as a facilitator and me telling everybody what's going on. It's about what do you want? What works for you? And let's talk about different things that work. You know, so there's the wellness toolbox, and then there's a daily maintenance plan. And then there's triggers, and then they have an action plan for what to do about triggers. And then there's early warning signs, like, you know, things are kind of like getting bad. And so early warning signs have to do with external triggers, like external events that are happening that are like, whoa, this is starting to bring up a little more difficulty for me.
So you mentioned triggers.
Yeah.
When would a person know that maybe they could benefit from going to Monadnock Peer Support?
So that is a really great question because our services are fairly broad. So you could be coming in because you have a diagnosis of severe and persistent mental illness, or you could be coming in because you're like, hey, I might fit in here, I'm not really sure if I do. So it's for anyone who has a lived experience for 18 years of age and older, and you self-identify as having that. So like, yes, this is something that I struggle with. And so you could be someone who definitely knows that you've struggled with that. You could be at risk for it. So it's very broad. And, you know, we're not going to ask, hey, what's your diagnosis? Come on in. You know, it's very much what's your experience. You know, it's not what's wrong with you. It's about what's happened to you.
Now, do you find that a lot of folks that come in the door have experienced some kind of trauma in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. To be very frank, there's a lot of research that's been done and that links a lot of mental illness, which is like, I tend to use the word mental health issues as opposed to mental illness. But that links mental illness to having had some kind of traumatic event that's happened in your life. And the thing about trauma is that no one can say for you what your trauma is. Like, you don't compare trauma. It's very much a decision that you make of like, this really affected me and I feel like it shouldn't have affected me, and it's silly or it's trivial. And that's where a lot of sort of the validation comes in of what your experience is and what's going on for you. You know, because a lot of times we tend to sort of think about how, oh, that wasn't really a big deal. It shouldn't really affect me. But in a lot of ways it does. And so until you sort of look at it and you think about it and kind of process that, then you're able to sort of kind of think about how you can integrate it and what you want to be different in your life.
You know, it's interesting because there's so many things that happen in the world around us, and both in the past and there's things that have happened, you know, that are cultural things that have been very broad, that have had the impact on people. You know, even things like the economy. And I have a friend right now I know who's just said that he's post-traumatic stress disorder because he lost everything in the economic downturn. And when that happened for him, you know, it was a huge life-changing experience. Lost his home, lost his, you know, just everything, lost his job. And here was a person who had always lived very well off and suddenly was faced with having to live a very different lifestyle. So, you know, it can come in many forms, I think, is what you're saying to us, is that, you know, it could be that person that's had some kind of experience in their life, such as that, or it could be somebody who's perhaps had trauma in their early childhood that's, you know, now impacting as they move into their, you know, early adult and adult years. I know one of the things that they've said is that lots of times the bipolar and the manic kind of show up in those 18 to 21 year old time frames. You know, you mentioned some of the trigger type things. Are there things that people can sort of on their own be knowing that maybe this is a time where I need to reach out, or people around them may be able to say to them, you may need help?
Yeah. 18 to 24, 16, that whole age is a pretty crucial time for a lot of folks, and it is when a lot of mental health issues start to sort of pop up. So, you know, sometimes I think about it when I'm thinking about how do I describe depression, or how do I talk about someone's experience of bipolar. How do I talk about schizophrenia? What does that mean? So a lot of it is like common language. There's been a lot of discussion about putting sort of these clinical terms that we have that we sort of apply to people or label people, and making it more of a common language. So I might talk about having really big feelings of joy or really big feelings of pain. You know, being scared to leave the house, being scared to talk to people, being scared of people, sitting in my car and being like, I don't think I can get out and do grocery shopping today. You know, and you know, one of the things that I wish I had known about, and that's why I feel like very privileged to be here, is if I had known about Monadnock peer support when I was in my 20s, it could have been a completely different ballgame for me, because that's when a lot of my mental health issues started kind of poking up. You know, exactly that anxiety and not wanting to leave the house, and you know, big feelings of fear, and it might just be sort of like an extreme state. And so this place is very unique in that, and special in that people can just sort of come in and it's not like you're not allowed to talk about your diagnosis, but you're more than a diagnosis. So I don't know if that's
You're
sort
a person. No,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I was actually sitting here thinking, and look at you now, you're on TV.
Yeah.
You know, and here you were saying, you know, at 20 you were afraid to come out the door and things, and having a program like Monadnock Area Peer Support, a support service like that, and that's what I loved about it, was the whole peer-to-peer piece. Tell us a little bit about the intentional support that you are providing. That
Totally. Yeah, totally. Like, so a lot of times, you know, when things are bad, it's really hard to think about what's good. You know, so there are a lot of times when people come in and they're sharing like a lot of big things that have happened or strong emotions that they have. You know, it's really about community building. I think it's really about having a place where you belong, and a place where you feel like your voice matters and what you say is heard and sort of makes a difference. So if you can go back to your thought.
the whole intentional.
Yes, intention. So intentional peer support is about how we're not just like all coming and hanging out and talking about how life sucks. We can talk about that, and we do talk about it. And there's this other process. The other process is like, okay, life sucks. What do you want? What do you want to do? Because when you find that people are there for you and believe in you, and there's that sort of connection, then you can sort of start thinking about like, wow, people believe in me. People take me seriously. People are listening to what I have to say. And okay, what do I want in my life? And so like a lot of times when you have a community come together, there's going to be a little friction, you know, mm-hmm. People see things very differently. And so because intentional peer support is trauma informed, we talk a lot about holding multiple truths. So you and I could go through and see something that's happened. You know, you could take 9/11. We each have very different stories from one common experience. And your view is just as valid as my view. You know, so how you experience that day is not any less or better than mine. So we would kind of like talk about, well, how did that happen for you, or what happened on that day for you, and how did you get through it, and well, this is how I did it, and it's a lot of asking questions and being curious, you know. So, and then kind of moving forward about that is that because it's a peer thing, we're set up like this, you know. It's very much, there's not a hierarchy. We try, you know, when it's odd and it's weird because like, hey, you're paid, your staff, like, this is a weird thing. Okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how it's weird. And that's okay to talk about. Let's talk about what that feels like for you, and what would be helpful for you to feel more empowered. You know, so it's a very honest, transparent way of practicing peer support. And a lot of times, like, people talk about hearing voices, and people talk about, you know, seeing things that aren't there, or being really, really angry, or really, really excited, or dealing with an addiction. You know, someone might be dealing with having an addiction like having dealt with heroin, or they're maybe at the methadone clinic, doing the Keene Metro. We are there to support folks who have been through that as well. In the summer, we're hoping to we will be starting up a dual diagnosis group in July. That whole piece of coming together and thinking about, okay, when I'm coming in with a big experience or an extreme or unusual experience, and I'm talking about like wanting to kill myself, it's like there's a lot of times when you can respond to that with be like, okay, that's really scary, let's call the police and get them involved. Or we can talk about the feelings that are there behind it. So it's this kind of active hope as averse to being afraid. And so sometimes all people need is like, yeah, that's a really hard situation to be in.
I think what I hear you saying is it's about validating feelings.
Absolutely.
Is a part of that. I like the word hope because you're really offering almost like a hope recovery.
Yeah.
Really instilling that is there and it's a value and that you can believe in it. Yeah. And giving people that environment and that supportive environment to really feel that experience in some ways, feel that that there is hope, that they can be believed in, and it's providing that one-to-one peer support. It does that in that group support.
Yeah.
Now you offer other programs there. I know you have a gardening program, for example. What are some of the other things that you're doing that really people can engage in and be with each other and experience this hope together?
So we have a community garden. We are very fortunate to be one of the sites that Antioch University, New England, has this program called Keene Community Garden Connections. And so this is our 4th year. I want to say it's our 4th year now, which is amazing. Maybe our 3rd. But we have 5.5 raised beds, and we have a sort of flower garden that we do in the front, and that's every Wednesday from 11:30 to 1. And if you like gardening or you have a green thumb, come on down. And we do, we have groups that are fun, like gardening, and they're hard work, and you get kind of immersed in the beauty of the outdoors and being connected to something that grows and lives. And then you have that kind of fun part where once we're harvesting, we can bring it back to having our community lunch. So every Thursday we have a community lunch. We take a $2 donation if that's possible for folks, and we get together and we cook together. We make a simple meal, and then in August and September, when we have that harvest, we've got a lot of fresh stuff that's harvested. And then there are times when we've had so much that we've donated that to the community kitchen, which has been that's been really cool for us, so that things, we're not going to waste. So Antioch University and the community garden coordinators, Libby McCann and everyone over there, they're fantastic, and they've been incredibly supportive. So we're really lucky to be a part of that. The other thing that we have, a lot of our groups and a lot of our activities are come up by members. So we'll do trips. We've gone to Hampton Beach in the past. We have gone to museums like the Courier Museum. So this is a chance for people to kind of get together, and we provide free transportation. We try to do things that don't have a cost or have a very low cost. And then another cool thing that we do is we volunteer over at the Monadnock Humane Society. So that's every Tuesday from 2:30 to 4:30. So, and that allows for our travel time. So you could meet us there. We ask that you come in and you do like the volunteer sheet, kind of like that little interview piece. And then we can, as long as things seem to fit well and feel well for both of us, then we can get you connected to going there. And you could meet us there. You could take your own car there, or you could come to MPS and get a ride on the van and volunteer with us. So we do like the laundry and hang out with the cats and the small animals and the dogs. And, you know, a lot of people talk about how when they don't have an animal, that makes a huge difference for them because they're not allowed to have one or something like that.
You know, what's really neat about that is that you're improving your own health and well-being while giving back.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all know that animals, they say, have tremendous ability to alleviate stress and reduce stress in our lives, reduce our anxieties. Just sitting with them and petting them or walking them can really improve our overall well-being.
Yeah.
So really exciting stuff. Now, I'm wondering whether you're seeing any vets coming into the program at all.
We do. They sort of come and go. One of the things, we do have some who are long-term folks. And so, yeah, that's been really cool. It's sort of been, I know that there's a lot offered through, for veterans, through veteran, I'm going to totally lose my language here, but.
The VA services.
Yeah, the VA services, thank you. So they have a lot that's offered, but we do offer that support for vets as well. So it depends. I think we'd like to get more into that, like to offer more services for that population, offer more services for the college age. You know, we have a broad range of folks stop by. Yeah, and definitely have we have definitely had our share of veterans come through. I think, yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, it sounds like, you know, it's open to anyone, but you can, because it is client-driven in some ways, some of your groups and things, that if really there was a special need out there, it can be developed.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I heard you mention dual diagnosis, and for those of you out there who may not know what that means, that's when you have a combination of mental health and substance abuse issues. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you're getting ready to develop a program that's really going to be peer support around both of those needs. So again, people living with that kind of experience and being able to share and support each other in a very structured, intentional way.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, the other exciting thing that you have coming on board over at your location on Beaver Street, and I want to make sure we get information out about that in a minute, but is kind of a respite, almost stay for people.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because that's really going to be fulfilling a very unique need here in the Monadnock region that we just don't have right now.
Yeah, it's we're really excited about it. It's a very, you know, the idea of having peer crisis respite has been around for a while. So I would say like since the 90s at least. You know, Monadnock Peer Support has been in existence since 1995. And we had an old name, so our old name was Granite State Monarchs, which is where we got our butterfly bulletin name from for our newsletter. But peer crisis respite, when you're looking at someone who's dealing with a mental health issue or a lot of big emotions, or things are, sometimes for me, I like to talk about like my head feels very full, or there's too much going on in my head. Peer respite can be an alternative to hospitalization. So instead of going to the emergency room and sitting there sometimes for a long period of time, waiting for a bed to open, Cheshire Medical has made great strides to try to get that much shorter, which is awesome. You know, there's been a lot of talk about that, but sometimes people don't need hospitalization. Sometimes going to the mental health unit isn't necessarily in their best interest. They don't need that level of care. So the idea behind peer respite is kind of taking what we do during the day, where we have folks that are there who have lived experiences with mental health issues and saying, hey, you could stay overnight, you know, you can bring some food, there'll be a restroom, you have access to a shower, we will have some food there. So we would have folks stay for up to 7 days, and there would be that one-on-one peer support person there, like the whole time. They could come down and be a part of the program if they wanted to. Definitely having some access to like doing art. You know, I've done peer respite before, and it for me it felt like a touchstone in my life, where I was able to, you know, be there for the time that I needed, and just have that kind of one-on-one support and talking with different people, and, you know, the staff asking me what was going on for me, and
Sorry.
it's fun. Yeah, just being willing to listen and kind of roll with the punches. And the other really cool thing is, like, everyone who comes in there is an adult, so they're going to be treated as an adult. There's a lot of emphasis on kind of like personal responsibility, and like if you have an issue with someone, it's okay to talk to them and say, hey, I have an issue with how you handled that or what's going on there. So that's another really cool thing. You know, you very much bring your whole self to it as a staff person and as a member. So, you know, it's going to be really exciting to have this. So we have a training for the staff coming up, and we're hiring staff, and like I said, we're hoping to have that started in September or so.
And what really makes that unique is, what I really, really like about this is that, you know, right now people's options are fairly limited. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're having that crisis moment, lots of times you do end up in the emergency room. We know that there's been such historic cuts, both across the state and nationally, that there's very limited treatment beds available to people. And like you said, sometimes treatment isn't necessarily the right thing. It's almost like a person may just need to be able to take a step back and take a break for a little bit, and then re-enter into their jobs or whatever they may be doing. But sometimes you need that temporary break and support. So this is really providing an incredible option that we just have not had in the Monadnock region. So exciting to see coming.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about it is we've had a lot of community support for that. So we've had letters, you know, from Phil Wyzek, the CEO of Monadnock Family Services, saying this is a really good and important program. You know, MAPS Counseling, Gary Barnes, Sheriff Eli Rivera, Ken Miola, I think I said his name right.
You did.
The Chief of Police, Cheshire Medical, you know, a lot of community support, and I'm really sorry if I forgot anyone else who gave their support, so thank you. But it's been pretty amazing, you know, because there's still a lot of stigma out there with regards to having a mental health issue. Like, it's not okay to talk about. It's you know, you could lose your job or not be hired for a job. And so we really tried to provide a lot of education and a lot of advocacy around that. You know, so to have, you know, to go for me in my lifetime to being very closeted about having any kind of mental health issue, to actually talking about it and sharing my experiences, and then advocating and asking for letters of support for peer respite, and having these community leaders and stakeholders come around and support us is very powerful. You know, I think that the way that we talk about mental health is evolving and changing, and it's very exciting to be able to have this peer respite to be offered in the very near future. Now, if folks are in need of peer respite currently, there is Stepping Stone in Claremont, they do peer crisis respite. And then Hearts in Nashua does peer crisis respite. So we're slowly kind of expanding that because we're one of 10 independent peer support agencies in the state. So I think that's important for folks to know while they're kind of waiting for it to open here. And it will be one bed. You know, at present it's going to be one bed, and it will be like up to 7 days. But you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes.
I think, you know, that's an incredible service that'll be provided here in the Monadnock region. Also like that you mentioned the advocacy piece, because that's part of what we talk about on this show. And I know Damien Licata, the executive director there, has really done a lot at the state level to advocate for the needs around mental health services, and Phil Wysick as well from Monadnock Family Services. They've really taken real leadership around that. But you mentioned, you know, advocacy here at the local level, and what could a workplace do to really be supportive, and can you support a workplace that may want to educate people and make them aware?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's been some discussion recently about, you know, if someone is dealing with an addiction, a lot of times there's a zero tolerance policy for human relations, so they'll be automatically kicked off. And I think what might be helpful for other organizations is, you know, schedule a time to talk with Damien and say, hey, how have you done this, where you're working with folks who have gone through some, you know, they have some pretty extreme diagnoses and maybe dealing with addiction, and how have you worked that into caring for your staff? You know, so some of the conversations that have been coming up is, you know, what if we change it from a zero tolerance policy, if someone's coming and saying, hey, I have this addiction that I'm dealing with, or I'm having trouble with getting out of bed, or I'm really depressed, how can we provide support for those folks instead of just being like, hey, you're off the workforce, we're done. I think there's a lot of creative solutions that can happen, and a lot of way in which people could give each other support that they may not be aware of. You know, it takes incredible strength to say, this is something that's going on for me, and I think that there's a shift in our culture to sort of honor that and say, you've said this, that's a huge thing. Now, what can we do to sort of support you in coming to a place of recovery, in coming to a place of wellness?
You know, I think our colleges do a lot around that now. I think a lot of work environments do work around that now. And sometimes it's finding the right place that can provide that kind of support. I would love to see more and more businesses really embrace understanding the mental health issues and how it impacts their workforce, and how they keep their workforce engaged rather than just letting them go.
Yeah.
You know, and I still think we have some work to do on that. I know the Brattleboro Retreat is really making it an emphasis right now to remove stigma attached to this, and they're doing a lot with employers and a lot with the community, and the communities throughout the area on this. So it is good to see, and you know, I think we have to remember that for especially some of our younger generation right now, they have lived through, you know, several significant, what I'd call traumatic events, whether it's 9/11 or some of these other events that, whether it instills fear or anxiety or whatever the emotion may be, you know, places like Monadnock Area Peer Support are really meeting them at whatever is going on for them, whatever level they're at, and figuring out how to support them in that. So such a valuable service. So you've got programs going on.
Yeah.
You've got the butterfly bulletin that people can express themselves and be creative with. You've got respite care coming. You've got the dual diagnosis program coming this summer. And people can just drop in.
Yeah.
Now, if they wanted to drop in and just see your facility, or if they wanted to come and find out whether it's more information for themselves or somebody they may care about, or it may be an employer who wants to know more about the services and how they can share those with their employees, how would they reach out to you?
So we're located on 64 Beaver Street in Keene. So if you pass Beaver Street Market, you've gone a little too far. You got to come back. We're a cream-colored house, and you can see the raised garden beds on the side. And our phone number is 603-352-5093. And I've got to remember to talk about the warm line as well before I let you go. Our hours, again, we're open 7 days a week, and they're from 9 to 5 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, 11 to 7 on Wednesdays, and on Saturdays it's 9 to 1. We also have an LGBTQ support group, which is the first of its kind for peer support agencies in the state, which is really awesome and exciting. So people might be having struggles or dealing with some challenges or having dealt with some stigma around having a mental health issue, and also trying to figure out or live their life with having your sexual orientation or your sexual identity or your gender identity. So that's something I think is really important for folks to know about, that we provide that support as well. So I'm really proud of that. But parking is in the back. You know, you can walk down. And we have a website. We have a Facebook page. We're Monadnock Peer Support Agency on Facebook. And our website is www.monadnockpsa.org. And then, so I'll give a little bit about the warm line. Our warm line is 5 to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, including holidays. So you could talk to a trained peer support worker and just kind of share what's going on for you. You may be in crisis. You may just be calling to make a connection. You know, a lot of times what's missing is just having that kind of like feeling it like you're connected to the world. And a phone call can really do that for you.
So I know our audience loves to hear stories that where it's worked for somebody, where it's had a real impact on their life. Do you have a story you can share?
Well, I'm thinking about in terms of, you know, wanting to protect confidentiality and privacy. So I'll kind of make a couple of sort of amalgams of people's stories. I know that for the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, that people going through that and sort of figuring out what their wellness toolbox is and what their day looks like, you know, from day to day, and what they do over the course of a day, and what might be different from the weekend for a work day. You know, because I mean, we have folks come in from kind of like all walks of life. You know, you might have someone who has a home provider, you might have someone who has a master's, and we're all coming in to kind of support each other around these common experiences. So sometimes that can be kind of challenging, and I think, you know, the spaces where people, when they've come together and sort of talked about what's going on for them in a wrap group or during the workshop that, you know, that we're going to be offering on Mondays from 10:30 to 12, starting in the last week of June and going into August. It's this space where you're really sharing they can be really gut-wrenching things that are going on. And you sort of ask this question, well, what are some things that you like to do? What are you involved with? And just that group coming together, and people generally leave that group with sort of this sense of hope, or like, oh, wow, I could try this, and I didn't realize that I could try this. You know, it's a lot about how different things work for different people. And, you know, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, it changes as you change. So it's not something that's stagnant. And I think that's really cool, too, because we're always thinking about what we want to move towards. So, you know, we've had folks come in and become employed, helps them through their employment process, which is such a privilege. You know, folks who have come in and said, hey, I'm really dealing with a lot of suicidal ideation, and I'm having a hard time getting out of bed, and I can't find any hope, you know, and seeing those stories being heard and validated, and, you know, well, this is, what does that mean for you when you talk about suicide? What does that mean? Because a lot of times people are talking about pain. They're talking about ways of dealing with pain. You know, I think of people who have dealt with self-injury or who are dealing with self-injury, and wanting to figure out how. I'm going to sneeze.
It's the lights.
Oh.
I felt that way earlier.
But thinking about how, you know.
Bless you.
Thank you. You know, it's figuring out how self-injury is there, and instead of viewing it as like, oh, this needs to stop, like, what function is that serving for you? And if this is serving a function, what other ways could we figure out to support you? Well, like, members came up with a fidget box. You know, we have this fidget box with squishy toys and beads. You know, a lot of times people, you know, it helps to have something to sort of ground you and keep you kind of connected in your body. And members have come up with that. Like, we don't call them clients because we're talking about people who are just like us. You know, and I think when people start to hear you say, okay, so, you know, having that conversation around, I'm a staff person and I get paid to do this job, what does that feel like for you, and what's that bring up for you, and how can we make this work for both of us? You know, but we've also come in and supported folks with case management appointments. We've provided support for folks who are at New Hampshire Hospital, you know, whether they're trying to figure out whether, you know, they have a hearing that's coming up. You know, it's a broad range, and I think that people just being able to have a chance to really share what's going on and have a sense of hope, have a sense of like, wow, things might be different for me, things could change, and people actually, you know, believe in me for that to happen. You know, it's a very privileged with the staff that I work with. You've mentioned our executive director, Damien Licata, our administrative assistant, Erin Rochelko, very, very talented, because we work in the office and then we also do, you know, facilitating groups. Yeah. Right, so, you know, we've got Jim McLaughlin, who is a driver and also does groups, and Jim Noyes and Donna LaFord Duadra. I probably just murdered your name, I'm really sorry. And Sarah Johnston. And Sarah Johnston's our mover and shaker. She actually, we have employee awards that happen, and Erin received the Employee of the Year award last year. And Sarah Johnston has, because she's such a mover and shaker, she has this thing that she says, which is the tuck and roll. We're going to tuck and roll. We're going to get this done. So she does the programs for the community garden and the volunteering. And so we have an annual meeting where we invite like the whole public in, and we do a big meal and an award ceremony, and it's a lot of fun. And a lot of people show up, and the food is awesome. And a lot of community people come in, like yourself. It was really cool to see you there last time.
It was great.
Yeah, and so she has this award called the annual, you know, Sarah Johnston Tuck and Roll Award. So And I think that is all the staff that we have.
And you have a great staff. Is there any opportunity for volunteers to do anything at
Yes.
the organization?
Yes, one of the really cool things is if you like to do art or music, we are always looking for folks to come in, and we have an arts and crafts for recovery group that happens on Fridays from 1 to 2:45. And if you're an artist and you want to come in and show folks what to do or how to do it, that would be fantastic. We have a small budget, so we can do a little bit for supplies. We've had Nancy Selwyn come in, who does her fear of singing. I'm going to miss it a little bit, but she does Music Together, and you can find her online. And she volunteered and did music with us during our music group, which is every Wednesday. And we've had artists come in. Luann Udell did a whole, she's a local artist who I think has moved, but she did a whole thing about stamping with us for our members. But any kind of art or music, we always need help with, groundskeeping and, kind of maintenance type things. But, if you come in and say you want to volunteer, we will do our best to try to find something that will fit and work for you. Because it's important to be a part of the community and to give back to the community. We definitely want folks who have mental health issues to come in and offer to volunteer. A lot of times, you feel like you don't have anything to offer. And it's pretty amazing because you actually really do. Our art group right now is run by the members. We don't have a staff person in there doing that group, which is really, it's a really fun, laid-back environment. People can come in, but it's not all just we're just going to come in and do glue sticks. There's actually a purpose, and there's been some really cool art that's come out of it. And there's a huge correlation between, being in a state of recovery and wellness and being creative. So I love that about our program. You can kind of find what works for you. Some people come all day, every day. Some people come every once in a while. So we're definitely open to volunteers. You can call us or you can email us. You can find us on our website or Facebook page.
So can you give people your phone number and your email contact information again?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. My email, if you want to find out about the Wellness Recovery Action Plan or anything else regarding Monadnock Area Peer Support Agency, you can go and type in JGROPHEAR at Monadnock PSA, as in Peer Support Agency.org. Our phone number is 603-352-5093. And then if you want to find us online, our calendar is online. We try to keep that as updated as possible every month. It's www.monadnockpsa.org.
So I want to thank you, Jude, for joining us. It was just wonderful to have you on the show. I know you brought a little resource library with you for the public. And before I bring the show to a close here, I'm just going to give you a chance to maybe pull out a few of those resources that our public may be interested in utilizing.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. So this is the Little Red Book, and this one is the sort of the guts of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. So Mary Ellen Copeland has put together a whole bunch of things, and intentional peer support, there is a connection between intentional peer support and which is IPS, and Sherry Mead is kind of the one who created that, and then this connects to the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. There was actually a webinar that Mary Ellen Copeland did about peer support just recently. And we've got Winning Against Relapse, Healing from the Trauma of Abuse, the Depression Workbook, RAP Plus, a sort of wide variety of books.
So I'm assuming people could also reach out to you if they'd like access to sort of this library of resources that they may want to draw on.
Yeah.
Again, Jude, I want to thank you for joining us. Jude Grove here from Monadnock Area Peer Support, a program coordinator there, offering tremendous, unique programs, peer-to-peer support around mental health, and really just serving a need in our region that's just so valuable. Again, I encourage you to not only reach out and to give and volunteer to this particular program, but remind you that together we all have to live united if we're going to make a difference in our communities. So remember to give, to volunteer, to advocate. Thanks for joining us.